All right, so we are going to now shift over to hearing from one of the caregivers. There are many wonderful caregivers here in the room, and I think all of us are aware of the tremendous sacrifices that our caregivers make to support their loved ones as they go through this head and neck cancer treatment and recovery. And fortunately, today we have Tanya here who's going to share her story, her wisdom, her perspectives as a caregiver who provided support to her husband, Patrick, who we heard from this morning. So it's a nice compliment to hear from both sides of the dyad. So, Tanya, thank you again for volunteering to be part of our day.
Well, first of all, thank you to Heather and to Stanford. And um, it's kind of a full circle moment to be here today. A year ago, we were just at the beginning, well, halfway through Patrick's treatment, and we were at home. It was COVID, so we were at home watching this online. So kind of a special welcome to everyone watching online right now, because that was us a year ago. You heard from Patrick earlier, kind of his story about his diagnosis and leading up to it. So as the caregiver perspective, I'm just going to jump right into from the time we were actually diagnosed. It was hard to transition from seeing squamous cell carcinoma on a piece of paper to actually saying it out loud. I still get emotional, sorry. It made it real, right? And none of us as caregivers or as patients chose to be in this position. But there we were. And so I guess my coping mechanism was I wasn't sad, I wasn't angry, I wasn't anxious, actually. And I there was this switch that got flipped, and I immediately just went into this, what do we have to do next? Like, what's the next step, right? I didn't really think too much about what was going on with me in that moment. I don't know if that's healthy or not, because I didn't really process any emotions. It was just more about, what do we need to do for Patrick next? He initially didn't really want to tell a lot of people what was going on with us. I tend to probably overshare, and so I wanted to tell a lot of people. I ended up just telling a few friends, and I will say, as a few more people got to know what was going on, people want to help. So if you're watching this, if you're kind of at the beginning stages of treatment, for people watching this, throughout the year, further down the line, I would encourage you to reach out, even if it's a small circle of friends, encourage you to reach out, because people really want to help you and support you. And I had people, they were sending us Amazon gift cards. They were sending us, restaurant gift cards, sending us prepackaged meals. Prior to this experience, I think if someone had come up to me and told me that they had cancer or their spouse had cancer, I don't know what I would have done, right? You want to offer to help, but there's not a whole lot you can do. So by just being gracious and accepting even small gifts, it was helpful to us. It was helpful to our friends and family. People want to feel like they're being helpful. So just even being gracious enough to accept small gifts made a big difference for us. As a lot of you know, just out of curiosity, how many people here today are caregivers? So this is our tribe, right? We don't know what it's like to be the person with cancer, but we know what it is to walk beside them. And that's a really hard role sometimes. The first couple weeks was pretty easy. right? We had first few radiation treatments. Patrick's chemo was structured so that instead of going in every day, he would go in once a week, every couple weeks. So the first week, it was like, oh, that's great. I didn't bring any pictures. I wish I would have taken pictures, but he's just in his clothes. He's on his computer. He's working. He's smiling. He's got his IV going. Like everything was fine, right? So the first couple weeks, my role really was just kind of getting him to his appointments, being with him during doctor visits. I knew I wanted to be prepared as a caregiver. I had no idea what I needed to be prepared for. So I bought a calendar to keep track of everything. I knew there was going to be a lot of medication, so I bought one of those, huge pill boxes with like 5 slots per day. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew I wanted to be good at it. And so we just kind of winged it a lot. We just made stuff up as we went along. The next few weeks, maybe 3 and 4, it started getting a little more real, right? It was more medications as we went along. He was starting to really feel the effects of his treatments, and that's when I really started to feel like a caregiver. Up until that point, I think I just felt like I was just his wife driving him to his appointments. When he really started to feel the effects of treatment, that was when I kind of was like, oh crap, like I need to do something. Like I need to take care of him, actually. And we talked about how I would go with him to his appointments, and I was the one taking notes as he was starting to feel, worse and worse. He had questions sometimes. From my point of view, I had other questions. So it was this constant dialogue of what does he need? What do I need to know? The doctors, the care teams, they are amazing. They were very supportive of me. As I would go back and read the notes from the visits, it would say, Patrick was here with Tanya. Like they didn't even need to clarify who I was anymore. The notes were just like Patrick and Tanya. I kind of started to, a lot of the nurses had told me about self-care. And, it's such a common phrase anymore, self-care. But I really started to listen to them a little bit more because I knew that if I wasn't taking care of myself, I couldn't take care of him. There's this kind of phenomenon called burden of care. And basically what that says is the stresses perceived by the caregiver, if those make the caregiver feel bad or feel not healthy, that's just going to lead to more negative outcomes for the patient. So I would do things like when he would go to his infusions, they were like 6-hour infusions, right? So I would go for a walk to the shopping center. I haven't read a romance novel in, I don't think ever. I think I read 4 of them during his treatment. It was kind of this little treat to myself. When we would go home in the evenings, at this point in treatment, he was really tired, so he would sleep a lot. And so I think I watched every episode of the Great British Baking Show. It was kind of my own little time while he was sleeping, but I was there with him. And to me, that was the most important thing. Even if nothing was happening, even if he was sleeping, being there with him was my biggest, that was my main goal. Being a caregiver, We are, we're really part of the care team. And I feel like a lot of caregivers don't give themselves enough credit for the role that we play. At some point during his treatment, he lost his voice. And so even just the simple act of answering questions at the doctor's visits, that was up to me. It was up to me to kind of interpret little nuances of what was going on at home that the doctors couldn't see. And I think as caregivers, we really just need to recognize that we are a very integral part of our patients' care. And I hope that people take that seriously, without the caregivers. I mean, the doctors see us for just a few minutes, a half hour, an hour a day, and we're with them the rest of the time. And so we really are kind of the eyes and ears for the care team on campus here while we're not on campus. I love this symposium because it gives us a chance to be in a room with other people that understand what we're feeling, and our experiences are not all the same, our cancers are not all the same, but there's kind of this understanding of what the role of a caregiver is. And I would encourage people when they're on campus, and especially when we're, if we were over in the Blake Wilbur building or, across the street at the 900 building, start up conversations with other people that are waiting, the waiting areas, the coffee shop. It's a cancer center, so chances are pretty good that they're there with someone that has cancer, just like you are. I had a really lovely conversation one day with a mom. Sorry. Her daughter was there for a brain tumor, so her head was shaved. She was 15, and I started talking with her name was Maria, the mom, and she showed me a picture of her daughter at her quinceañera, and she had this beautiful long hair, and her dad had bought her this beautiful dress, and her mom was so happy to show that photo. And I think it was really helpful for her to have someone to talk to who kind of understood where she was coming from. And it was, I think, healing for her to look back at how her daughter looked a few months ago and kind of help normalize that she would, she had a really good prognosis and she would get back to that point again. But, all of us that are in that building were there for a reason, and we're all at different points in our healing journey. And it can be very, I think, isolating to be a family with someone going through cancer because, a lot of us, for me in particular, I'll speak for myself, I didn't have a lot of experience with any cancer in my family, any cancer in Patrick's family. And so to be able to reach out and have a conversation with another caregiver made me feel a little less isolated. It made me feel like my experiences were not, although they were unique to me, they were kind of shared across the board with other caregivers. And that feeling of, not feeling like you're the only people going through this was really, really helpful. Oh gosh, weeks 5 through 7. I think that was kind of when I was the most overwhelmed personally. I was Patrick's transportation. I was trying to figure out what foods to make for him. I was trying to manage our financials at home. I was trying to make sure all the bills got paid, feed the dogs, take care of the kids. They're grown, but they still need some supervision. I was just feeling really overwhelmed, but we were far enough along in his treatment that I could also kind of start looking forward to what life was going to look like after treatment. Backing up a little bit, we live in Fresno, so that's like 3 hours away. I have family that lives in San Jose, so we were able to stay in San Jose during the treatment, and then we would go home on the weekends. And we're so lucky that, Patrick had great insurance through his job. My job was, we both work in hospitals. My job was PRN, so I was able to take time off and really just focus on taking care of him. Our kids, they're in their 20s. They still live at home. But they were able to take care of the house, take care of the dog. So having all of those resources in place made my role so much easier. And so if you are someone that has those resources, it's a big burden to be lifted. Without those resources, the team was, our care team was very helpful in making sure that, we did have a place to stay, that we did have the support that we needed. So that side of things, that piece of the puzzle was just a huge burden that I didn't have to worry about. Back to weeks 5 through 7, this was kind of the worst part of everything. And I really felt just a little lost, a little overwhelmed, but again, looking forward to the end of treatment. Patrick, by this point, had lost about 50 pounds, and we tried really hard to keep his calories up, but he had to get a G-tube placed the day before the last day of his treatment, which was kind of hard. Like, we were really trying to get through the whole thing without having to have that happen. But again, it was the last day. We had a vacation plan for later in the year. So that was really, really helpful to have kind of a long-term event planned. It was helpful for us to just kind of keep the big picture in mind and realize that where we're at right now is just temporary. Life will get back to normal. It was hard to see some days, but we knew life would get back to normal. And one of the nurses, I remember one day, just encouraged me to really just allow myself to feel the emotions of that moment. And I will say that that was super helpful because I felt like I was constantly having to be a cheerleader, right? For our kids, for Patrick, for myself. And it was almost like having that permission to finally feel sad, scared, angry, whatever. It was okay. Like, it was okay to have those feelings, but have those feelings and then move on. And that, I think, throughout the whole course of his treatment was probably the best advice that I got from any of the staff, was just feel your feelings, experience them, acknowledge them, but then move on, right? You can't stay there forever. Start looking forward to the plans that you have after treatment. We made it through our treatment. Coming home was kind of awkward, right? Because I had to obviously feed myself, but my focus was still on trying to transition away from a G tube to normal food. I had a lot of anxiety over, we were just talking about it earlier. I kept handing him shakes, different smoothies, like, here, try this, here, try this. And they didn't all work. Some of them were, I tried them and they were kind of not that good because I kept trying to put too many healthy foods into them. But, it was the whole process, of finding, our doctors kept referring to it as your new normal, right? His taste changed. He still didn't have much taste at that point, so trying to figure out what was going to work, what was not going to work, figuring out which supplements, right? Like we were using the Kate Farms. I didn't mind how they tasted. He thought they were not very good. So it was just this constant trying to figure out what's going to work, what's going to be our new normal. I would feel guilty about eating in front of him because I knew he couldn't eat. I would feel guilty about, I was talking to someone earlier. I would just want to go out for a couple hours. I would go to, I don't know, TJ Maxx or Nordstrom and just like touch everything, right? That's just kind of get back. I wouldn't buy anything, but just getting out for a couple hours and just kind of not forgetting, but reacquainting myself with what my life was like before he got sick. But then I would feel guilty for leaving him at home. And so as a caregiver, right, it's like you're constantly, do you take care of yourself? Do you take care of your partner? It's hard, as I think from his side of things, my goal was that he just focus on getting better. My goal was to help him get better, but also take care of myself. So as a caregiver, there's always this balance that you're trying to find, and it's hard, and I know that. And all of you that are here that are caregivers know that. Caregiving is, that day that we got his actual diagnosis, caregiving, it doesn't just stop the day that treatment ends. These head and neck cancers, the radiation, there's symptoms and there's issues that are going to come up with that for the rest of our lives. So it's hard sometimes not to compare life how it was versus life how as it is now. Life will never be what it was, and some days, even now, we're a year out. Some days, even now, I miss life how it was. We would spend, all day Sunday. No, I'm sorry, you guys. We would spend all day, blowing through a couple bottles of wine and cooking all day and having friends over. We don't do that now, just because it's not enjoyable, I think, really for either one of us. Food doesn't taste the same to him, and I worry about how food tastes to him. So there's things that we used to do that we don't do anymore. But there's also new things that we do. We used him being sick as kind of a jumping off point for starting kind of a new normal for both of us. We have a lot more downtime, I think, just kind of enjoying each other. We used it as a jumping off point to create a better diet for ourselves. We are much more plant-based now. We've eliminated a lot of meats, a lot of processed foods, and just really kind of tried to live a healthier lifestyle, right? When he was diagnosed, I never worried about, oh my gosh, he's gonna die. Like that never ever crossed my mind, but it was a huge wake-up call to be like, we could be doing a lot better with how we live. And that's something that we've continued to move forward with, is just trying to live a better lifestyle. For me personally, it was a little tough, and I don't know if any of the other caretakers have felt this. It was tough transitioning as he got better and better. It was tough transitioning from being a caretaker back to just being his wife. It was difficult sometimes to see him as not sick anymore. And that was just something that I struggled with personally. I don't think he ever felt that, but for me, that was a huge issue of how do we go back to just being Patrick and Tanya, not patient and caregiver. I think ultimately, this going through the whole process, it's a strain on your relationship. You know, I've heard of people either getting much closer together. I've heard of people, their relationship doesn't survive treatment just because it's so much stress on both people. So for people that are, kind of at the beginning of the whole process, if you're in the middle of it, if you're 5 years out, I would just encourage everyone to just, give a little grace to the other person. It's a tough thing to go through. You guys all know that. A year ago, like I said, we were sitting at home watching this online, and I don't think either of us really appreciated how life-changing it is. Even now, there will be issues that come up later that we can't, we don't know ahead of time what's going to happen. But we are very thankful to be at this point where a year out, all of his scans are clear. I am looking forward to many, many more years with him being healthy. Caretaking it's stressful. It can be burdensome. But honestly, I can say that I actually, in an odd way, I loved every minute of it. I loved being the person that was there for him. I loved being the person that walked and continues to walk that journey with him. And I'm happy that he's healthy. So I think that's all I have for now.